What a
Please
gift.
welcome the incredible Cheryl Hunter.
Thank you, Renee. What a
You
treat.
are slightly gasping for air because you were surviving the fires in the Pacific Palisades right now.
There's 3 different areas within
No, really.
23 miles or something that are just have
That's
gone
gnarly.
up. A dear old friend of mine that has just been one of those solid friends over the course of a lifetime. She and her husband lost their home this morning.
No.
And it's one of those, God, it's so sad. And I think of the animals and the homes and hopefully no lives, but it's a real wake-up call to take stock and say, what's it all for? Right? Where am I going and why does it matter? Life offers us so many of these opportunities to stop and assess. And I'm stopping and assessing.
I had this moment. We just came back from Bali, and what an interesting place in the world. And I told myself this year that I'm going to be more like last year. My word of the year was full send, like just go at, and I did it. And I reflected on this year. So I came back after being away for a month, and I opened up the journal that I do my morning pages in. My last entry from the day before we left was all of the fears I had of this trip. Everything from like losing luggage to kids getting sick, everything that could possibly happen. So when I reread it, I was like, none of this came true. Mm-hmm. Nothing happened. And I spent weeks worrying about it. So I said to myself, Renee, you're going to just get a little bit scarier this year. Go and do stuff that scares you a little bit more. Participate in the activities of life a little bit more. Like if the boat's going snorkeling, you're going snorkeling. If the people in your group are going to tie themselves to a swing, like that iconic swing where you swing off the side of a mountain in Bali, I'm deathly afraid of heights. I'm going to do it. Mm. And I did. And nothing bad happened.
Wow.
So yeah, these moments in life when like, your dear friend losing their home, like you think about home as a sanctuary. That's a place where you go and you feel safe and it's your stuff and it's your smells and it's your memories. And that's taken from you. Mm. It's devastating.
And even though like I grew up in the Rockies of Colorado and we anticipate that kind of thing there. Forest fires are a real thing there. My family gets evacuated with some frequency. But to think, okay, I'm going to move to Los Angeles and mitigate all the natural disaster type things.
Yeah, no.
And still Providence steps in. Like, what on earth?
Yeah. And it's just, in my perspective, it's God saying, yep. Like, there's a thing.
Knock, knock. Yeah.
It's like reality is still happening. Like, just because the clock turned January 1st, 2025 doesn't mean like the whole world resets. Nuh-uh. Because that is a creation of our consciousness. Was hey, let's create a calendar year. Let's create time. When you think about it, at the end of the day, it's like, does this all matter? What matters?
Yeah. It's just so arbitrary to have a line in the sand like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great opportunity again. Life presents
100%.
opportunities to reflect all of it. But
so you have something rather significant that happened in your life that became the foundation of who you are and the impact you've created today. Tell us about that.
When I was a girl in the Colorado Rockies, it was so remote that there were no signs of modern day civilization unless I would lie in the meadows with the horses and cows grazing there and look up at the sky, and planes would fly overhead. We were in the flyover zone. And I look at those planes and think, God, I want to be the girl in the plane. But I'm nobody in Nowheresville. I don't have anything to give anybody. Why would they put me on a plane? But someday I'm going to figure out what that was that I could do for people. And that was how I spent so much of my childhood, dreaming there. And as a little girl, it was fantastic to grow up there. But as I got to be older, I wanted to meet people that I wasn't related to. I mean, our entire school was just over 100 people, and everybody knew everything and everyone's business. And we were 20 minutes from the nearest town, and it had a flashing stoplight on one side. It was no town. There were no stores. There was nothing to do there. And I thought, God, I feel like I'm captive here. This beautiful captivity and this beautiful horse ranch. I got to get out. I've got to figure out how to be the girl on the plane. And my parents were in the midst of a divorce. And I thought, you know what? They don't talk to one another. I'm going to sort of play this in my favor. And I'd seen some magazine, fashion magazine, a natural place that a teenage girl would turn for career advice. And I thought, I was like, they were talking about models and how they always need one in the fashion capitals of the world. And I go, fashion capitals of the world? That's nowhere near Rye, Colorado. This could be the ticket. I'm tall enough. I was already on the boys' basketball team. I'm like, this is my ticket. I'm getting out. I talked a friend into going with me. We both worked a lot of odd jobs, saved money, and that was it. Somehow, miraculously, my parents couldn't agree to disagree that I would go. And so that was a de facto agreement. There I go. No sooner did we get to France, literally.
Oh, you went to France?
Yes.
Okay.
Then a man with a camera, big fancy looking camera around his neck, walks up to me and says, hey, are you a model? I can make you one. And I'm thinking, boy, this is how easy it is to become a model. Holy mackerel. Does this indicate that I'm on the right path or what? My friend's like, no, over my dead body. You're not going with this guy and his friend. But she wanted to go home afterward. I had said to myself, no, I am finding a way on this trip. And I thought, I'm smart. I know how to drive a pickup and a horse trailer and a tractor. And I'm strong. I can wrestle a steer. I'll figure it out. I ditched her, went with them. They asked me if I wanted wine. I'm like, oh no, I want to be good for the photos. They're like, don't be the stupid American. You're so prudish, you American. Oh, okay. Sauvignon Blanc. Boy, that sounds fancy.
It does. How old were you?
18.
Okay.
A very, very naive 18.
Mm-hmm.
I wake up, front seat of the car. The window's open, my head's hanging out the window with my tongue out like a dog, and I'm drooling. And I'm thinking, wait, this can't be good. Look, it's two criminals, me, a span of many days. You can fill in the gory details with your mind. You might be listening with your kiddos. I'm just going to cut to the chase. We all experience things we never wanted. We would never have chosen for ourselves. And yet, here they are. And I was faced with this unthinkable thing. And in the midst of it, I didn't know what else to do. I just bargained with God, please let me go. If you let me live, I will be a good girl. I will let my little sister wear my clothes. I will hold my grandma's hand at the mall. I won't talk back to my parents. I'll be happy. I'll be a good person. There's this odd phenomenon, Renee, where when something bad happens, particularly when we're young, but even throughout life, we somehow feel like we're culpable. And I felt like I was there because I deserved to be punished. Before I left, there was this freak accident and a baby drowned at the ranch. I didn't even know the baby was there. But I felt like I was the eldest of all the kids. I should have known. And I felt like what was happening in France was my comeuppance. It was the way it needed to be. Yeah, punishment. To set the world back on end correctly because I had let this baby die. And for whatever reason, days later, after days of just unthinkable torture, they say, all right, clean up. We're getting out of here. We had been in an abandoned construction site. There was a pipe coming out of the wall for water. I used sandpaper and scrubbed myself down. And then they took me and dumped me out of the car on a piece of ground. And
in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a park near-ish this, the town, but so often we pray for something and we're like, that's going to make me fill in the blanks, happy in my case. Let me live and I'll be happy. And I'm lying there and the reality is setting in and I'm thinking, happy? That's an impossible promise to keep. I now feel ruined. And there's just so much captivity between my ears. The conversations about somehow getting revenge against them, or how am I going to keep anyone from finding out, and how can I stop thinking about it and reliving everything that occurred. It was the worst kind of torture because there's no getting away from the captivity of the mind.
The trauma.
Yeah.
How long did it take you did you go home from that point?
No, I became a model anyway.
You stayed?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I went through all that to become a model. I'm going to actually do it. I got a list of model agencies, went to everyone, just finally took the first one that said yes. They were like, oh, you're American. Maybe we can work with that. It was okay. We love you. You're so fantastic. I mean, it ended up going quite well. I was the worldwide Coca-Cola girl. I worked for every magazine franchise, but I felt so broken. The only good thing about being a model is they send you all over the world in many days. The people that I worked with spoke no English. So nobody, and in general, you're not expected to talk as a model. Nobody wants to hear from you. It's just smile, pout, whatever, run, lean against the wall. It's just like this kind of cryptic direction. And that was all good by me. One of the things I started doing just as a self-help tool, I started journaling. And ultimately, I started writing, and I was like, some of this is kind of good. But it was how I found myself initially. And it also served the dual purpose of, if somebody's got their head buried in a book, people kind of stay away from you. And that was good. I didn't want anyone to get near me because I thought somehow they'd be able to tell that I was broken or damaged. They'd somehow be able to smell it on me almost.
That's
so I just kept my distance. Say that again?
That's so interesting. So this was all in France.
Well, I moved to London, Paris, Milan, Tokyo, New York City, just that's, all the normal rounds of being a model. But France was part of that. But then once I moved back to the States, I realized, okay, the journaling only took me so far. I had to find a way to overcome. And I thought, okay, look, I had a real straight conversation with myself. You're not the first person to go through something hard. Other people have. Find them, learn from them.
Yeah,
there
not
are
many people
books.
have been abducted before.
Yeah.
That's a unique story.
I mean, yes. And we all, what it is to, in some regard, to be a human is to have life go differently than we hoped.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I've learned in the process of overcoming myself and initially studying these people who had gone through far worse than I is that trauma is a spectrum, and it doesn't matter where on the spectrum we fall. Mm-hmm. It's our response is the same. The compensatory contortion that happens in the wake of that is the same. Our self-condemnation and self-blame is the same. It's a similar response. And I'll hear people say, oh, well, what I went through was nowhere near as bad as you. And there's no such thing. It is for each of us. We've all gone through and continue to go through challenges. A little kindness to ourselves is helpful. But one of the ways that I learned how to overcome, in addition to writing, was I started volunteering at old age homes. And there were war vets and Holocaust survivors and so many who had gone through unthinkable things. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, first of all, they loved talking because sort of in the Western world, we don't always revere our elders. Nobody listens to them.
Yeah.
And they had someone to listen to them. And I had the beautiful retrieval from listening to my own internal dialogue. And it was a match made in heaven. And then I could see, wait, there are certain ones who've gone through similar things. And one went on to live a happy, fruitful, productive life. And the other one, understandably, is bitter and hard. Why? And I eventually codified what works and what to never do. And it worked on me. And I thought, God, I got to give this away. And so I started finding other survivors, sexual assault, rape, trafficking, and I started working with them. And it worked with them as well. And I thought, this would be really helpful for the world to know that it's possible to overcome adversity, and not just overcome and get back to a sort of zero baseline, but rather to be left better for what happened, which seems implausible as you're going through it. But I thought, I want to somehow tell that to the world. And simultaneously, the writing had started to take off. I thought, I think this is good. Now, maybe it's just me. So let me go put some of my writing in front of an audience and see. I started doing stand-up. I also started staging plays. And I found that it was difficult to get groups of actors to show up. And I was like, I got a gig. I got got called into work. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do all the parts myself. And it worked. Solo plays are a thing. And I started getting them developed by big studios and networks, and eventually started selling TV shows and started selling my writing. And that's when it hit me. I thought, you know what? I can see the power that major media has to shape our collective conversation. There are these water cooler moments where everyone in the world is discussing the same thing at the same time. And I thought, if that power of media were used for good to disseminate a message that could positively impact the world, that would be revolutionary. I'm going to do that. I'm going to let people know they can overcome adversity and be left better for it. And I'm going to do it through major media. I'm already connected, I thought. Took me over a decade, which seems implausible. How could it be that dang hard? I just didn't know. Well, I didn't know anything about doing that. I didn't know what I didn't know. I got blacklisted at a couple places. Unwittingly, with the best of intention.
Yeah.
Like, what? Oh, that's a thing? Okay. We're just trying to help, but okay. Ugh.
Oh, yeah. The world of PR, that was my world for the longest time. And part of the work that we did, like the filter was whatever you do, don't get blacklisted. So for those who don't know what that means, it's like essentially where they block your contact information and you can't send them anything because of whatever. This happened to me. I forget the name of the platform I was using years ago, but there was a query out. Was it Help a Reporter Out? It was Help a Reporter Out that was owned by Cision. And there was a query that was a very sexist query. And I replied to it, not answering what the reporter needed for the story, but actually just calling him out on where this could be incorrect. And he took it and went all the way to the top. And then before I knew it, within a week, I got an email saying that I abused the platform and I am no longer able to use it.
Wow.
And I go, oh, when I read my email, I was like, no, I'm just calling out a sexist.
Yes.
A misogynist. I'm not doing anything else, but I just said, hey, potentially this could be sexist. And they never even asked me my opinion. They just said,
can you expound on that?
Blocked, goodbye, my entire company. I go, well, we actually use this for our business to serve our clients. So this isn't good.
Yes.
So eventually we got it back, but wow, you do not want to be blacklisted.
Yeah. It's real. And generally it happens through somebody who's well-meaning. Like you actually were trying to contribute something here.
Yeah. I was trying to bring awareness to what could potentially have been an article or a story that would not have served a great purpose. And also, like, I was naive. Maybe I misunderstood the query, but I thought it was very clear to me. Anyway, so now you're done to modeling. You're seeing this world of media. What's next?
Well, I take the task on of getting the message out to the world about overcoming adversity. It takes me a decade. I'm still writing TV simultaneously as my day job, but then eventually I get the message out in a really big way. And I'm regularly on breaking news and talk shows and all of it. And it hit me once I had really gotten big exposure for the message. I thought, you know what? Even though I've continued to help people overcome adversity, it didn't stop with that beta test of just the trafficking survivors and rape and sexual assault survivors. I kept doing that work with people who had survived anything. I thought there is an entire industry dedicated and to helping people overcome trauma, and they're far better equipped than I to do this. But nothing exists to help mission-driven experts who want to change the world with their work become seen and known and heard. If it took me a decade and I already worked in major media, how in the heck does anybody figure it out on their own? So I gathered together journalists and the writers, producers, directors that I had made friends with over the decade and said, tell me, why is this a stupid idea? I want to encircle experts who want to change the world with their work and help them craft their messaging in the way that only we would know how to do because we already write media, and media train them and help them earn placement. And what do you think? Is that a stupid idea? And to a person, they all said, this is why I got into media, to help people. So it's a great idea. And so I transitioned and pivoted to helping people overcome that. I mean, I'd done it. I'd worked in media long enough. I'd wanted to help people do that. And that's what my team of gatekeepers and I do today. I still now have found a way to support people with the resilience work that I do. It's less focused on just overcoming adversity and more focused on the art of developing the skill of resilience. And I do that. I have a different team, and we deliver that for individuals and organizations. And
oh yeah, my friend Blair has a book called The Resilience Project, I think. She talks about this. Yeah. It's incredible. Resilience is like this word that does not come up enough. We talk about successful entrepreneurs in terms of like grit factor.
Yep.
And hustle and drive.
Yeah.
But not about resilience.
It allows us to be buoyant rather than brittle. It's the burnout is very common in the business owner world, right? And anecdotally, I've experienced it, but I've been very close with groups of dozens of entrepreneurs over the years. I'm a third generation business owner myself.
Okay.
And I've just heard the tales for so long. It's interesting. My father was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and he used to say, as he started to get older and softer, don't spend all your time at work, honey. Don't do it. And I thought, yeah, that's nice. And when I take some time off, I'll really ponder that. Good one, Dad. Thanks. I appreciate that. He's like, my dad told me that, and he died before he could ever take advantage of all he'd built.
It's crazy how we work, especially like with the American dream. We work our whole life, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, maybe a couple weeks holiday, to retire at what's the retirement age now? Like 60, right. 65 to be able to afford a life, to get maybe some years, but it's not quality years in terms of like overall health where you can actually go and adventure for most people. So we spend the good years of our life grinding. And for many, it's doing something they don't love.
Yep.
It's sad. So I say retire before you work.
Wow.
Or like just the whole way the business world work needs to be shaken up. And especially small business, corporate, how the team is treated needs to change. Like to be entitled to 2 weeks vacation after you've put in a year's work seems so stupid to me. Like I can't believe that still exists.
Right.
Like we've always had the mandate in our company, in all the companies I've ever ran, that we had like a no vacation policy, meaning like if you get the work done, because you know what your 10 out of 10 is on a Friday afternoon, then go have Monday off, have Friday off, take a week off. Like just tell us when you need the time off. There's no excuses. It's like you're a human, you have a family, you have a life outside of work. You can only be happier and productive when you're actually filling that part of your life as well. And so our team, like I remember the first time, I want to say like I lured this guy away from a job that he had been at since he was like 16 years old. And he was working for a local newspaper. And he'd been there for, I don't know, 17 years maybe. And I was running a PR agency. I said, come work for me. And it was like the third weekend. He took me aside. He's like, hey, Renee, on Friday, is it okay if I leave at like 2:00 in the afternoon because my daughter has a dance recital? And I was like, I can't believe it probably took him a whole day to build up the courage to come and ask me. And I said, Eric, never again do you ever have to ask me. It just is what it is. You come in and you tell me you're taking this time off. As long as it's not conflicting with something that he knows is really important
Right.
in business. But I go, that stuff matters most. Because if there's anything that you're behind on, you can pick it up in the evening or whenever there's a time. So the whole business world needs that shakeup. And I see it happening. I also heard whispers of, get this, companies in the US now offering menopause leave.
Wowza.
Yeah. And I was listening to Steve Bartlett's Diary of a CEO podcast. He was interviewing a woman, I forget her name. I mean, she's a doctor, and she has this breaking studies about women gaining muscle and what we need to consume and do and not do during certain times of the month. All the studies that we've ever known about how to gain muscle and how to be healthy have been done with middle-aged men or like a 35-year-old white dude. Like,
wow. Revolutionary, right?
But it's not. It's not revolutionary. It's like finally someone's like, wait a second. And the woman herself,
in comparison, right?
was even in a study. She was in a study and she was the only woman in the study. And her results were such an anomaly. You know, in the world of like science and data crunching, you take out the anomalies, that they just removed her from the pool altogether. They never questioned why it was different.
Yeah.
So anyways, the podcast, Stephen was saying, now I don't know if this is true or not, but I trust him, that he's in the UK. They said that some of the top performing episodes around health for 2024 in the UK was the same guest that did podcast episodes in the US. And it was that woman who has a book that just came out and a documentary about menopause. And I turned to my husband and I told him this. He goes, you and I have the same TikTok feed right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but isn't it fascinating that after all these years now, men are talking about menstruation and menopause and perimenopause, because they're like, oh, wait, this is the thing that exists. It's the thing that exists. So all this to say, women are we operate differently. And in the business world, maternity leave, Canada has 12 months. US has what, 3 months? What a shame.
Yeah.
What a shame. Something tells me that'll change, though. It's got to change.
There's something I found really encouraging occurring this past week. Women, quote, of age, of a certain age, being recognized, specifically in Hollywood, with Demi Moore winning the Golden Globes and Jodie Foster being
also recognized. She looks amazing at 62.
Right? Just so great. There's something, why I care about Hollywood in this is people pay attention to that kind of thing the world over. And when women of that age start to be recognized, it's distinct from the George Clooney's of the world being recognized. Women of age traditionally have not. Sure, if somebody's a Dame Judi Dench, but they're no longer playing the vital, it's a unique type of role. And to see some of the women featured now and the types of roles that are available and that are starring and now winning, it's just, it's very encouraging. It's a future that I love seeing in front of me versus the future where women are not represented past a certain age.
No, I remember when I was, I don't know, in my early 20s, I was going for my first ever line of credit at a bank. And I don't know if my memory serves me in this, but my recollection of the event was I went into the bank with my mother and they refused to sign. But when I went in the next day with my father, no questions asked. And I go, I don't know if this was because of the person behind the teller or the banking system, but it was like, wow. And my mom then told me all the stories about she couldn't open a bank account when she was my age, like back then.
Wow.
Because, So, and we know like this whole thing about the feminist movement was actually not the best thing, really, to be honest. However, the bright light in all this is these little deposits, these little sparkle moments, like Demi Moore, these like menopause leaves, the people like Steve Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, saying that some of the best content of 2024 was about menopause. It was like, so now this stuff is surfacing. And in my perception, men are scared. They're scared because they don't know what to do with this. But I also think there's a lot of men that are embracing it because
yes,
we couldn't even say the word period without men being like, eh. Now It's like, screw it. Like I see women now opening up their purses and tampons plopping out and they're not embarrassed by it anymore.
Yes.
They're like, whatever, it's a thing. We all go through it. I drove my kids to school last fall and they were like asking me questions about like the anatomy. They're 10 and 11 at the time. And I turned to them and was like, you know what? I'm full on going to tell you all the details about what happens to a woman's body because they were like given some idea.
Yes.
So from the time it took me to drive them to school, we'll say 15 minutes, I let it all out. And their eyes were bugging out of their head. And I remember we were stopped at a red light and there were women crossing the street. And Noah goes, Mama, does she have her period right now? Does that woman have her period right now? Like I go, I don't know, possibly or not. And then I told them how painful it can be for some women. And so now I comfortably tell my children if it's that time of the month because my mood changes. I feel it and I hate it. Noah will grab my arm and he's like, are you in pain? Do you want chocolate? Because I told him to ask me that question.
Yeah.
and then it's such a beautiful thing. Finally, these little men are growing up to understand the world of what it's like to be a woman. Hallelujah. So anyways.
Extraordinary kids you're raising. That's so cool. So inspiring.
So that was a tangent. Coming back to the work that you do now. Now, do you run an agency?
We do things differently.
Okay.
We teach these experts to become their own publicist for the life of their brand. We start out by helping them craft their messaging. We media train them. We help them get initial mentions so that they remove the barrier to entry. And then when they're ready, we introduce them to our gatekeeper contacts so that they can build relationships, learn what works for each of them, because it's different for each person what they're looking for. And we help them be able to not only be their own publicist, but really command attention and garner the listening so that they can make the difference they want to make. When I was a writer, when you sell a show and you're the creator of it, you have produced by credit for that as well. And I could see the budgets of the different things that I had sold and when I was at different film companies and TV studios, and I could see, publicists were always included. And it's like, well, why not just hire a publicist? It was part of what I was trying to figure out when I was trying to get my own message out to the world. And I did hire several, didn't ever help me in any way. But what I learned is that when we had a star on a show, a celeb can hire a publicist any day of the week, because the big publicists generally who can get you on TV, they work with celebrities. And it's really just a matter of booking them and doing press junkets at the right time, et cetera. But the kind of people that my team and I work with, mission-driven experts, they can't hire a publicist. I mean, they can get a Main Street publicist anywhere, but the ability to get out there and actually earn media that matters will forever elude them unless they can figure out how to do that. And they relate to it similarly to like how they bring marketing in-house. Well, I could hire a marketing agency, and some do, but if I'm going to get really good at it, I may have somebody on the team that their entire bandwidth and time is allocated toward developing that skill so that they're speaking in, the voice of the brand. And similarly, that's what our clients will do is move their PR in-house so that they can earn the kind of media that their audience is consuming, whatever that is.
That was the big transition for me. So when I started in PR, my first agency back in 2012, I would say like 90% of our pitches got picked up. It was so easy back then. And we worked with funded technology companies. So like SaaS-based companies, and we had all the contacts at like TechCrunch, you name it. And then things got busier. And then all of a sudden, PR companies were a dime a dozen. And it got watered down. And we got more complicated in the sense that it took us 2 to 3 times the effort to get 2 to 3 times less the results. And clients didn't want to pay us as much as we were once charging. And I said, this is either an indication that this process doesn't work anymore or that this whole category is changing. And so we noticed that we needed that smaller companies needed to bring this talent in-house. And what we started to do was taking all this years of PR experience and training their assistants to pitch them. And then they started landing big media. It's as easy as that. But they needed to know how it worked. Mm-hmm. So we did these 30-day strategy build-outs. So we'd build out their entire PR strategy to teach them the system of how to make it work for them and how to craft the messaging and who to reach and how to find these people. And it's worked very well for many of these people. And I'm no longer in that business. I'm out. Done. Peace.
I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you see that shift in the world of PR, especially in the last 5 years?
Well, I think there's a sort of imaginary Venn diagram, if you will, where there's 24/7 content and streaming, including all that, social media, and all of it. And there's, one of the things I consistently hear from the gatekeepers that we introduce our clients to is that every time they pitch a segment, their job is on the line. Even if they're like a 30-year veteran, if somebody comes in and messes up or does one of the, those things that gets you blacklisted, like coming in and just talking about your brand and act now, call now, operators are standing by. But I mean, I say that in jest, but there's a lot of ways you can mess that up. Their job is on the line.
It's so crazy.
Or they get in trouble. I've had people say, I'm not going to deal with them upstairs having my head because I bring somebody untested in. And it used to be back in the day of the old time news, like they'd sit around and smoke a cigarette.
Drinking a martini.
Over an hour of news. And they had a whole team of writers and producers working to distill it down to 1 hour.
Now we have Claude and ChatGPT for that.
Yeah, it's just all day long. Nobody can possibly come up with that much content. And yet, if their job is on the line and if they're going to get in trouble if it doesn't go well, they're only going to use the same handful of experts, which is why you see the same people.
So how do you become that same person is the question.
Media training, for one thing.
Yeah.
You have to know how to deliver what they need delivered, and still you got to make it worth your while. You're, doing, sometimes people fly themselves around the country to do it. You're not paid to do major media, but if you nail it and you fulfill what the media platform wants you to fulfill, while simultaneously plugging the work you do in a way that's not going to get you blacklisted, you are now in front of millions of people who want what you've got. And then if you get invited back again and again, So media training is seminal. Messaging is critical. And even as a TV writer, I was like, yeah, I know everything about messaging. I didn't have any idea what that actually meant and how to turn a news cycle in my favor and how to take that conversation and push it forward, which is what the media platform is looking for as well. Media training, content, the ability to carry a conversation forward and truly display expertise. And that's when people start to beat a path to your door. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I mean, it all comes down to relationships. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you know this from PR work. Generally, what a publicist will do, I mean, I've hired so many of them in my own path to getting my message out. It's like, that's the one thing that they kept veiled. It's like, oh, we're never introducing you to our contacts. Even if an introduction was made, the info would be redacted. You're going to speak to Jim S. at, wait, what's her name? So I know. No. It was an artifice. It was so weird. And I'm like, no, the thing that matters, yes, I want to teach you how to build relationships, but also give you a leg up. Here's the producer of the Today Show, or not everybody's, you can't start there, but here's the producer of, CBS in Orlando or Fox in Tallahassee or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that we did differently was whether we were doing this 30-day strategy build out or we had retainer clients, is they had active insight, like a window into the media list, detailed information about all the contacts. Because like the reality is you can get that information online for free, but if it's not a warm relationship, it's a lot harder for them to actually want to hear from you.
Right. And if you're not pitching in the way they personally like a pitch to come through, they're not going to open. These people are getting, some of them I have them say this in front of our clients so that they know, I'm not making this up. They get 700 emails a day.
Yeah.
How do you cut through that noise? You think it's hard to get recognized on social media. How do you get through?
Yeah. There's, I used to be subscribed to some of these journalist Substacks, and during the gift guide season, where like before Christmas, so usually from like September or even like August till November, they can get up to 1,000 emails a day for people pitching their product to be a gift guide. So when you open up like a magazine, there's like listicles of like a top 10 things to get for mom. That's what they're writing. And they get 1,000 a day. So how do you cut through that?
Yeah.
It's all about relationship building. At the end of the day, I remember winding up a 6-month contract with the client and everything was great. And we were about to hang up our last call together and he stopped me and he said, Renee, if there is one thing I can do with all this stuff that you've done going forward, what is it? I said, get in the room, network, go to events, expand your network, find the people who are the decision makers. Because when you get their phone number and you text them, anything can happen. You can do all this beautiful work in the world of PR, and yes, it can help 100%. But every single person that got to that next level, crossed the finish line, was because of who they knew.
Right? Truly, it is, right? In a world where, let's say, everybody, the floor is that you're talented, you're the real deal, you do good work in the world. But there's another 100,000 people who do that, at least, right? How do you stand out from everybody else who's doing that? One of the things I did learn in that 10 years that it took me to finally get media, for a long time, I wasn't sharing my own story. So initially, as I was like, hey, I can help people overcome adversity. I'm really good at this. I've helped this many thousands of people. It was kind of like, okay, what's your angle though? Oh, none. I'm just somebody who's fascinated. No, this like this. Okay, nobody cared. And then when I decided, look, I'm no longer a child. I don't need to hide anymore. I don't think I'm truly damaged. It's time to share the story. It could help. Then there's, how do I share that story in a way that people are left inspired about themselves?
Yeah. In awe.
And not concerned for me, for a starter. When I first shared it, people were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened to you. You know, and it was like, okay, this is not forwarding anything.
Yeah.
This is leaving people wanting to run and horrified for me. So there's a way to share, to be really authentic and vulnerable and share, and do so in such a way that people hear themselves. They hear their triumphs in life. They hear not just where they've been triumphant, but their own fears and concerns. Like you share you, they hear them. And that's a magical place of storytelling.
It's the, I like her or I need that response.
Yes.
That's it. And if you like somebody, then you will trust anything they're selling. Or if it's the messaging is so clear, you're like, I need that. 100% I need that. They're speaking to me. That's it. They're like, hey, Renee, you need me. I was going to say the story about this woman who kept contacting me on LinkedIn. And she's like, Renee, I'd love to write content for your LinkedIn and grow your LinkedIn. And I was like, finally took the call. And she was super organized, super professional, very clear step-by-step process and what to expect. And I was like, oh, this was when I was going through due diligence for my agency to be acquired. So I was like literally stepping away from the world of PR to go and do something else. Then the something else is my big event coming up called the Pink Skirt Project and this podcast. And I was like, oh, I don't really, I'm not really doing anything right now. This was like the bridge few months. I go, I don't really have anything to share. She's like, oh, no, the opposite is true, is people want to know what you're thinking and what you're doing to go from that point to this point. Everything in between, you have tons to share. So we all have a story. Even those women that are like, I'm just a stay-at-home mom and I want to start a business and no one's going to care. It's like, yes, we all have that possibility within us.
And oftentimes it's the things that we feel compelled to hide. There was a husband and wife that came to me. They're college planners in Atlanta. And they were getting ready to close their doors after 10 years of being in business. There was such a shift post-pandemic. Kids didn't want to go back to school if it wasn't going to be in person. Parents were afraid, God, it'll be all in person and I don't want to. There was so much fear and trepidation. And so I started working with this couple to help them navigate this and turn it around. And the husband, now he shares this publicly. So I'm not revealing anything out of turn, but he said, I think I'm going to need you to sign an NDA because my own story I can't share. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm listening. Tell me more. That he says, I never went to college. How could a college planner who never went to college share hilarious. That? Isn't it?
I got a bug in here. Well, fun fact is that I ran a successful PR agency, never pitched the media a day in my life. Before, during, after.
Amazing, right? It is. And it's like these things that we think we can't share. For this guy and his wife, I asked, oh, right, why did you get into this? Right. Yeah. Such imposter syndrome. And he said, look, I was a quintessential kid of a Filipina immigrant. His dad had passed. His mom was raising 5 kids on her own. He said she worked so many jobs. We could barely keep food on the table. College, that's impossible. But so why did you become a college planner? So no kid ever has to go without like I did. So kids can fulfill their potential. And I was like, okay, we're going to lead with this.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what will make people hungry, like you said, Renee, that they must work with you only.
Yeah.
And it did that.
Yeah, I remember in high school, there was a high school named Whitfield where I went, and they had the best volleyball team. They had the best coach, and he just understood. He just got it. He never played volleyball a day in his life.
See?
And these women graduated from secondary school and went off to play varsity in some of the top colleges in North America. And that I will never forget that, because I remember he would do summer camp, so he would train me too. And I asked him like what his volleyball game was like. He's like, "Oh, I've never played before." And I was like, "How? It's called reading the
Right.
play."
Mm. It's astounding. And you could imagine that in many circles, people would try to hide that and evade questions on it. One of the things I learned that I found most transformative in my journey of overcoming the kidnapping, I moved to Japan. And while I was there, I learned a principle called wabi-sabi. And it was in that era where I just had my nose in a book and kept far away from people. Rather than spending any time with any of the girls my own age, I would spend the day, unless I was working or on an appointment, I would spend the day in my agency. It was just my agent and her grandparents. They kept them around in case any big decisions needed to be made. You'd consult your elders. And they told me this principle called wabi-sabi. They stated, the grandfather stated that wabi-sabi tells us that the beauty of any object lies in its flaws. So something can only be seen to be beautiful or embody perfection to the correlate degree that it embodies flaws, damages, ruined parts. They blew my mind. Renee, the natural first question was, could this apply to people?
Well, the Japanese also have that, like the broken plate where
that is, kintsugi and wabi-sabi.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Where they put it back together with gold and it becomes more beautiful than it was before it was broken.
What I learned in the process was of helping others overcome adversity is that it's not just those who have gone through true trauma. There are things for each of us that we think, oh, that's a flaw. I should bury that. I should hide that so that I just put my, quote, best foot forward. But the things that really deeply connect us to one another. And so often that's the heart of a great brand story, is the things that we've previously believed are wrong with us. And so if we can tap into that wabi-sabi, the perfection of imperfection, that's when people start to hear themselves and see themselves and fall in love with our story, because it helps them fall in love with themselves and how magnificent they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I had my call with my spiritual therapist yesterday, and she's all about like the archetypes and spirit and soul. And we're like super connected in this way. We've been working together for a couple of years now. And she says that I embody the most the queen archetype. And the problem is that I'm not embodying it because I don't believe that I'm a queen. And one of the biggest things was that I don't allow myself to be me in many circumstances because of that fear of judgment. Most people do this. So to say that I'm a queen, like I don't deserve to be a queen. So what do I do to punt that responsibility? Is I always go and I help people, like the commoners, you think about it. So I'm always helping people, because a queen wouldn't be caught with her silk gloves actually giving food to people on the street. But because I don't believe that is me, I do the opposite. But when you actually can be yourself, then you embody these archetypes. It's not only freeing because you're expressing the full truth of who you are, it gives everybody else permission to do the same. And
Absolutely.
when you are yourself, you are so not afraid of offending others because you don't care if that's somebody else is offended, because that offense has nothing to do with you. So anyways, you got me thinking about this time too, the traumatic time in grade school when I was told that I was not smart, that I was actually stupid. And when you're young and there's people in your life that you look up to that tell you that, like, oh, you're not strong in school, you're not strong in math, you start to believe it to the point where you can't actually do it. And I've only as of late been able to slowly start to dismantle that. But this is the story. And these are the things that people connect with. Some of my best episodes on Into the Wild have been when I've been the most vulnerable and sharing the things I've been the most embarrassed about.
Right.
People want that. They want to know you're human, that you make mistakes, that you're imperfect.
It's the great connector, isn't it?
It is. Okay.
Counterintuitive.
We've been chatting for an hour. Holy moly, woman. I do have one last question for you. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
It means to be wholly in touch with that side of myself, of being a force of nature, and unapologetic for that. And it's not an individual phenomenon. It's really an unleashing, a collective unleashing. Like you said, when one of us is free, it encourages and enables others to be free. And it's being able to be a force of nature surrounded by forces of nature.
I actually just wrote that on my website. Before this episode, I wrote on my website, because I shared my vision for what my word is of the year for 2025. And one of the things that I said, I'm going to open this up right now, to be unapologetic. In 2025, we're not just launching forward as a collective. We're doing it while fully owning who we are. No apologies, no hesitation, just pure, authentic power.
Yay. Woo!
So Cheryl, where can people go online to find you?
My website is CherylHunter.com, Cheryl. I'm on Instagram, Hunter Cheryl, TikTok, Hunter Cheryl, Facebook, Cheryl Hunter.
Love it. Well, Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's an honor. Thank you, Renee.